The night my sister asked me to let my abusive ex-husband officiate her wedding, I actually laughed, like full-on ugly snort laughed into my wine glass. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. That was the moment I realized just how far my own family was willing to go to protect the version of me they were comfortable with, even if that version had almost destroyed me. Hey, I'm Esme. Some of you are already side-eyeing your screen because that sounds a little too familiar, right? The thing is, for 20 to 7 years, nobody called me Esme. I was Paula. Good daughter, good student, good Christian girl from the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. And for a long time, I was a good wife too. Good, in the sense that I'd bent myself into shapes that weren't human just to keep the peace. Now I teach art at an elementary school, Riverside, if you're from my side of town. And I wear paint on my jeans and glitter in my hair, an answer to a name my family still refuses to say out loud half the time. We'll get to that. Let me back up, because none of this is going to make sense without the before. Growing up, my parents had this unspoken family motto: appearances matter. We didn't say it out loud, but it was there in everything. Mom ironing napkins before Thanksgiving. Dad polishing the mailbox because the neighbors noticed these things. The way my siblings and I were basically little actors in the Matthews Family Holiday Special every year. We weren't wealthy, but my parents were obsessed with being respected. Church on Sunday, casseroles to sick parishioners, Christmas cards with matching outfits, my brother Craig in a little bow tie, my sister Allison with perfect curls, and me, Paula, the quiet middle child, holding a plastic angel. I learned early that what happened behind closed doors did not, under any circumstances, leave the house. You smile, you say, "We're fine." You do not make waves. So, of course, the first boy my parents adored was the one who would eventually turn my world inside out, Tyler Wheaton. I met him in college, sophomore year at a friend's bonfire. You know that guy who just owns every outdoor gathering? Guitar, dimples, telling stories like he's the main character in a Netflix drama? That was Tyler. He was a business major, president of his fraternity, the kind of charming that makes old ladies pat his arm and say, "I bet your mother is so proud." I remember the exact sentence he said to me the first night we really spoke. I was standing by the fire, hugging my cardigan around me, wondering how soon I could leave without looking rude. He came over, handed me a mug of something that was definitely not just hot chocolate, grinned and said, "You look like you'd rather be home reading. Am I right?" I blinked at him because, yes, I had a Jane Austen paperback in my bag, like a total cliché. I laughed, embarrassed. "How did you know?" He shrugged. "You've got that look. Like you're here out of politeness, not because you actually want to be. It's cute. Nobody ever noticed things like that about me. Not really. I was the quiet one, the good girl." Tyler looked at me like I was interesting. The spotlight of his attention was warm, and I stepped right into it. We started dating. Fast. Too fast, probably, but at the time it felt like a movie. And my family, oh, they immediately cast him as the hero. Finally, Paula brought home someone with some charisma. Craig joked the first time Tyler came for Sunday dinner. Tyler charmed my mom by complimenting her roast like it was a Michelin star meal. He bonded with my dad over football and ambition. He helped Allison with a job application, gave Megan, a scrawny 14-year-old at the time, his old iPod. By dessert, my dad actually said, "Tyler's the son I always wanted," even though his actual son was sitting 5 seats away. Everyone laughed like it was a joke. I watched Craig's smile go a little tight. I should have paid more attention to that. We got married the summer after graduation. Small church wedding, lace dress, my dad crying when he walked me down the aisle. I remember thinking, this is it. I've done everything right. I've ticked all the boxes. College, husband, job lined up teaching art at Riverside Elementary. My mom beamed at me at the reception and whispered, "You're set for life now, honey." If you've been through something like this, you probably already know what I'm about to say. The version of someone you date is not always the version you marry. The first time I felt that flip, it was over something stupid, a dish towel. We'd been married maybe 3 months. I'd left a damp towel lying folded over the oven handle, instead of hanging it up properly. Tyler pointed at it when he came home from work. "You know mildew grows when you do that, right?" I rolled my eyes, half amused. "Okay, Mr. Science, I'll hang it up next time." His jaw tightened, just a fraction. "It's not about the towel, Paula. It's about you not listening." It was such a small thing. I apologized, hung up the towel, kissed his cheek, but similar comments started piling up like that. Little criticisms, little digs, that made me feel smaller each time. "Do you really need a second helping? Why would you wear that skirt to my firm's event? It's a bit much. Maybe don't tell that story at dinner. It makes you sound scattered. Always said with a light laugh, or a babe, I'm just helping you, or you know I want what's best for you, right? The more he corrected me, the more careful I became. I stopped telling certain jokes because he said they were awkward. I changed my wardrobe to match his taste. I started obsessing about whether the house was perfectly tidy before he got home, because if it wasn't, he'd sigh and start wiping down counters like a martyr. And all the while, my family was in love with him. If I ever hinted at being unhappy, my mother would say, "Oh, marriage is hard work, dear. Your father and I had our rough patches too. You're lucky Tyler's so involved. Some men don't care how the towel is hung." When I told my dad that Tyler had opened a new joint bank account and suggested all my paychecks should go there for simplicity, my dad actually nodded approvingly. "Smart. That's how your mother and I do it. You two are a team." "Yeah," I said. A team. The gaslighting started slowly, in ways that were easy to brush off if you didn't want to see them. One night, I came home to find my sketchbook in the trash. It was this battered blue book where I'd drawn since high school. Little portraits, landscape studies, messy ideas. I pulled it out, pages smudged with coffee grounds. "Tyler, did you throw this out?" He glanced over from the couch. "Oh, that old thing. Thought it was trash. You haven't touched it in months." I drew in this last week. My throat went tight. He frowned. "Babe, no you didn't. You've been saying you want to get back into drawing, but you never actually do. It's fine. I'll buy you a new one if it matters that much." I knew I'd been drawing. I could see the page in my head, some quick sketch of a kid in the park. But under his steady gaze, I felt myself falter. Was I misremembering? Had I done it in my head and just thought I'd used the book? I told that story to Dr. Winters years later, sitting in her softly lit office while her little tabletop fountain trickled away, and she nodded slowly. "That's classic gaslighting," she said. "He's training you to doubt your own memory." Back then, though, I didn't have that word for it. I just had a feeling like I was slowly going mad. It got worse. He started correcting my recollection of entire conversations. "We agreed to spend Thanksgiving with my parents this year," I'd say. He'd tilt his head, painfully patient. "No, Paula. We said we'd go to my parents on Thanksgiving and see yours the weekend after. You even said it was better because your mom stresses you out." I knew I hadn't said that. My mother and I had our issues, but I loved Thanksgiving at home, he insisted. I questioned myself. My parents were hurt when we changed plans. Tyler, of course, texted my mom some long, apologetic message about my holiday anxiety and how he was trying to help me manage it. "Oh, he's such a sweetheart," she told me on the phone. "You're lucky. Lucky. The thing about being slowly chipped away like that is you start to disappear long before anyone notices you're gone." On the outside, everything looked fine. Better than fine. Tyler had a good job. We bought a little townhouse with a porch swing. He hosted barbecues where everyone laughed at his stories. On Instagram, we were couple goals. Matching mugs, Sunday pancakes, hash blessed. My family ate it up. Meanwhile, I cried in the shower so he wouldn't see. I stopped painting. I stopped seeing friends unless he approved of them. He thought Tara, my college roommate, was a bad influence, so I gradually stopped replying to her texts. He didn't like that one of the women in my book club talked back to her husband, so joining those meetings started to feel like starting a fight. I became smaller and smaller until there was nothing left but what he wanted. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Isn't that weird? You'd think these things happen on big days, but no. Just a Tuesday in February, dark by 5 p.m., icy slush on the sidewalks. Our car had broken down the week before, so I'd been taking the bus home from school. That day, a parent needed to talk at the last minute, and I missed my usual bus. I texted Tyler, "Hey, can you pick me up from the stop? It'll be dark by the time I get off and my phone's dying." He read it. I saw the "seen" notification. No reply. I rode the bus anyway, stomach nodding the closer I got to our stop. The streetlights had that orange glow that makes everything look a little sinister. My phone died 2 stops before mine. I got off, wrapped my coat tighter, and started walking the 3 blocks home through half-melted snow. When I turned onto our street, I saw our living room lights were on. Through the window, I could see Tyler on the couch, feet up, scrolling his phone. I came in, teeth chattering, toes numb. "Why didn't you answer my text?" He looked up, actually surprised. "What text?" "The one where I asked you to pick me up." "Oh, that. I thought you were being dramatic. It's 3 blocks, Paula. You'll survive." He went back to his phone. "You're always so anxious about everything. It's exhausting." Something in me snapped. "You knew my phone was dying," I said, voice shaking. "Not from the cold now. It's dark. You couldn't be bothered to put on shoes and walk 3 blocks. He rolled his eyes. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're overreacting again. You're not a child. I'm not going to enable your paranoia. I'd never hit anyone in my life. But in that moment, I understood the urge. My hands clenched into fists. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stopped. Stopped arguing. Stopped appealing to the version of him I kept hoping was still there. I went upstairs, pulled an overnight bag from the closet, and started packing clothes. He followed me up, his reflection in the mirror behind me. What are you doing? I'm leaving, I said. I can't do this anymore. He laughed. Actually laughed. Where are you going to go, Paula? To your parents? You've told them so many times how stressful they are. They'll just send you back. To Tara? You haven't spoken to her in a year. Who exactly is going to put up with your moods? I zipped the bag. My hands were steady now. I'll figure it out. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're being irrational. You're going to regret this. You're not, well, Paula, you haven't been for a while. That's why you're twisting everything into abuse in your head. This is what Dr. Jensen said might happen, remember? Dr. Jensen. The couple's therapist he'd insisted we see. A man he'd picked. A man who always, somehow, validated Tyler's sense of being long-suffering and patient. At the time, sitting in that beige office with the framed motivational posters, I wasn't strong enough to say, this therapist is biased. I just internalized, oh, I must be the one who's wrong. That night, though, I looked at Tyler in the mirror and really saw how calm he was, how certain he was that I had nowhere to go, that I'd crumble, and something else snapped into place. I would rather sleep on the floor of my classroom art supply closet than spend one more night under this roof. I took my bag, walked past him, and out the door. He didn't follow. I did not sleep in the art supply closet, by the way. I ended up on Tara's couch, curled up under her fleece blanket that smelled like laundry detergent and dog. When she opened the door and saw me, eyes swollen, bag in my hand, she didn't say, I told you so. She just pulled me in and said, took you long enough. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. My parents' reaction was not great. We met at their favorite diner, the one with the sticky red boots and the waitresses who called everyone on. I sat there, stirring cold coffee, watching my dad's jaw work. You're not even going to try? He said finally. I have tried, I said, for years. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin, even though she wasn't crying yet. Tyler says he's willing to go back to counseling, that he'll do whatever it takes. People dream of having a husband that committed. Committed to what? I asked. Controlling me. She flinched like I'd cursed in church. Don't be dramatic, Paula. Can you please stop saying that? Stop saying what? Dramatic. Overreacting. All of it. It's the same language he uses. Dad sighed. Look, kiddo, we know you've always been sensitive. Tyler told us you've been struggling emotionally. Maybe you're not seeing things clearly right now. I stared at them. He told you what? He's worried about you, my mom said gently. He hates that you're rewriting your marriage as abuse when he did everything he could. Honestly, it sounds like you had some kind of break, honey. That's how it comes across. I felt like I'd been slapped. You believe him over me? I'm your daughter. We're not taking sides, my dad said. We're just saying your perspective might be skewed. When you calm down, you might regret making such a permanent decision. They begged me to postpone the divorce, to give it 6 months. I said no. The papers went through anyway. That might have been the end of it, if Tyler had just let me get on with my life. But abusers don't usually stop when you walk out the door. They just switch tactics. Over the next months, he launched what I now call his reputation management campaign. He went to see my parents. He bumped into Allison for coffee. He texted Craig articles about supporting a partner with mood disorders. He told anyone who would listen that I was having some sort of identity crisis, that I'd become irrational and paranoid, that he still loved me and just wanted me to get the help I so clearly needed. And because my family had always liked him better than they liked conflict, they swallowed it whole. Around this time, I started seeing Dr. Winters. My school district covered a few therapy sessions through our insurance, and I took it as a sign. I remember walking into her office for the first time. Soft blue walls, a comfortable gray chair, a lamp with warm light instead of that harsh office fluorescent. There was a little fountain trickling away in the corner, and a basket of fidget toys on the table. So, she said, after I'd spent 15 minutes rambling about work and the weather and how traffic had been, what would you like to change by coming here? I stared at my hands. I want to stop feeling like I'm crazy. She smiled sadly. Okay, we can work with that. Part of that work was reclaiming myself. Not just the big stuff, like leaving Tyler, but the small things he'd chipped away. Art, friendships, my own name. My grandmother on my dad's side was named Esme. She died when I was 16, but she'd been my favorite person in the world. She taught me how to bake bread, how to sew on a button, how to stand up to my mother by just raising one eyebrow and saying, "Is that really what you think, Catherine? Or is that what you think you should think?" She was the only one who ever looked at quiet, rule-following Paula and said, "There's more in there, isn't there?" After the divorce, sitting on the floor of my tiny new apartment surrounded by boxes, I found one of her old letters. At the end, she'd written, "Remember, love, you're allowed to reinvent yourself as many times as you need. Life is long. Don't stay small to keep other people comfortable." I read that sentence 5 times. The idea of changing my name came slowly at first, like a daydream. What if I wasn't Paula, the dutiful one, anymore? What if I chose something that felt like me? In therapy, Dr. Winters asked, "Have you ever felt like your name was tied up with expectations you never chose?" "Yes," I said immediately. "If you could pick any name for yourself, what would it be?" The answer slid out of me like it had been waiting there all along. Esme. Legally changing your name is a lot less exciting than movies make it look. There's paperwork, fees, a hearing that lasts 30 seconds where a board judge asks, "Any particular reason?" And you say, "Personal choice." And he stamps a form, and that's that. But emotionally, oh, it was huge. Holding that court order in my hand, seeing Esme Catherine Matthews typed out, I felt lighter. Like I'd been carrying around a coat that didn't fit for years and had finally shrugged it off. I went to my parents' house that Sunday, court papers in my bag, heart hammering. We sat at the same dining table where Tyler used to carve the turkey. "So," I said, voice wobbling, "I have something to tell you." My mom stiffened. "You're not pregnant with Tyler's baby, are you?" I blinked. "What? No. God, no. I changed my name." My dad set down his fork. "You mean professionally?" "I mean legally. I'm not Paula anymore. I'm Esme." Silence. Heavy. Thick. Finally, my mother laughed. "Oh, honey, don't be ridiculous. I'm not joking." I slid the paper across the table. "It's done." She read it, color rising in her cheeks. "Why would you do this to us? To you?" "Our friends know you as Paula," she said, voice trembling. "The church knows you as Paula. All your school records, your childhood memories, Paula is who you are." "Paula is who I was when I was trying to survive." I said quietly, "Esme is who I want to be now." My dad skimmed the document, then put it down like it burned. "Is this about Tyler? Are you trying to punish him by erasing your past?" "This isn't about him," I said, even though of course he'd played a part. "It's about me." My mother sighed dramatically. "If this is what you have to do to heal, fine. Just don't expect us to go along with this nonsense." "I do expect that," I said, surprising even myself. "It's my name." Dad shook his head. "You'll always be Paula to us." And that, right there, was the beginning of the war over my identity. For a while, I made excuses for them. Changing how you refer to someone you've known for decades isn't easy. I got it. I told myself it would take time, that the little flinches when they said Paula instead of Esme would fade. But months passed, then a year, and the mistakes never slowed. At Christmas, my mom handed me a stocking with Paula glitter glued on it and said, "I'm not buying new ones just because you're pretending to be someone else this year." At family dinners, my dad would say, "Paula, pass the potatoes." "Sorry, Esme," with this little eye roll like my name was a joke he wasn't in on. Allison would send group texts. "Hey, Paula, can you bring dessert Sunday?" And when I gently replied, "It's Esme," she'd hit me with, "Relax, you know what I mean." They were refusing to step into it. And then came the wedding. Allison called me on a Thursday night. I was grading art projects at my tiny kitchen table, 23 variations of "My Family at the Park" drawn in crayon, when my phone buzzed. "Hey," I answered, tucking the phone between shoulder and ear. "What's up?" she squealed. "Guess who just got engaged?" I smiled despite myself. "Luke proposed?" Luke had been around for about a year by then. Nice enough. Software engineer, loved hiking, laughed at Dad's terrible puns. I didn't know him super well because, if I'm honest, I'd been keeping my distance from family stuff, but from what I'd seen, he seemed solid. "Yes," she gushed. "It was so perfect, S." She stumbled slightly. "Pa, Esme." "Ugh, sorry, that's going to take me forever." I let it go. "That's great, Allie. Congrats." "When's the big day?" "Next June. We already booked the church." "Of course. The same church she and I had grown up in. The one where I'd married Tyler in my lace dress. I swallowed. That's soon. I know, right? Anyway, I wanted to ask you something before we do the official announcement. Her voice softened. Will you be my maid of honor? My heart did this weird flip. Part joy, part dread. Yeah, I said slowly. Of course, if you want me. You're my sister. We talked about venues and flowers and dresses for a while. It almost felt normal, easy, like we were just two sisters sharing wedding excitement. Then, casually, like she was mentioning the DJ, Allison said, "Oh, and we have the coolest idea for the officiant. You're gonna love this." I was half distracted, wiping a blob of glue off a kid's paper. We're going to ask Tyler. The room went silent, except for the ticking of my cheap wall clock. What? She laughed. Don't freak out. Just hear me out. He's been doing those leadership things at church, and Luke thinks he'd be amazing. And it would be such a full circle moment, transforming pain into joy, healing, and all that. I could actually feel my pulse in my throat. You want my ex-husband to stand at the front of a church and marry you and your fiancé? Well, when you say it like that, it sounds weird, she said quickly. But Tyler's basically family. He helped Luke get his promotion, and he's been such a support to Mom and Dad through everything. It would mean a lot to them, too. I sat there surrounded by stick figure families drawn in crayon, listening to my sister talk about how my abuser had supported my parents through everything, and I swear the world tilted. Allison, I said, carefully enunciating each word. Tyler abused me. She sighed. We've talked about this, Esme. Your definition of abuse is just different. Yes, he made mistakes, but you weren't exactly easy to live with either, and he's owned his part. You haven't. I haven't. I choked out a laugh. I changed my entire life. I went to therapy. I left him. Exactly, she said. You left. You bailed on your vows. He stayed. That says something about character. I was speechless for a second. You're actually punishing me for leaving someone who is hurting me. No one is punishing you. Her voice went hard. This isn't about you. It's my wedding, my day. I'm just asking you to be an adult and coexist with someone for an hour. You don't have to talk to him or anything. Just don't make this weird. There it was. Don't make it weird, the family motto. I can't stand at that altar with him, I said quietly. I can't smile next to him like nothing happened. You're seriously going to make me choose between my maid of honor and the person I want to officiate? She snapped. No, I said. You're making that choice. We went back and forth for a few more minutes, voices rising. Eventually, she hung up on me, saying, You know what? I need to think about whether this maid of honor thing is even a good idea. You're clearly not in a healthy place. I stared at my phone. One of the kids' drawings had "My Family" written across the top in wobbly letters. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. That night, I told Drew, "Oh, right. I haven't introduced him yet." I met Drew 8 months after the divorce, at a professional development day where all the district teachers got herded into the high school auditorium to listen to a man with a headset microphone talk about 21 century learning. I was doodling in the margin of my worksheet to stay awake when the guy next to me leaned over and whispered, "If he says synergy one more time, I'm faking a fainting spell so we can all go home." I snorted. Loudly. A few heads turned. The man with the headset frowned. The guy next to me grinned, unbothered. That was Drew, 8th grade science teacher. Nerdy t-shirts. Kind eyes. The kind of man who listens more than he talks. We gravitated toward each other during the lunch break, half joking about the training, half seriously talking about burnout and kids with big feelings. I liked that he didn't try to fix anything. He just nodded and said, "Yeah, that sounds really hard." We started getting coffee, then dinner, then Sunday morning pancakes where he let me stir blueberries into the batter and didn't comment once on how messy the stovetop got. Being with Drew felt like exhaling. I kept waiting for the criticism, the correction, the gentle, manipulative advice. It never came. When I over-explained or apologized for small things, he'd squeeze my hand and say, "Esme, you're okay. You didn't do anything wrong." He was the first person I told about changing my name who just said, "Cool, what made you pick it?" When I told him about my grandmother, he said, "I'd have liked her, I think." So when I got off the phone with Allison that night, and my hands were shaking, Drew was the one who saw. He'd just come over with Thai food. He took one look at my face, set the takeout on the counter, and said, "What happened?" I told him the whole messy story, words tumbling out. By the time I got to the part about Tyler officiating, I was pacing, She wants me to stand there and pretend this is some beautiful symbol of healing. Meanwhile, he's still out there telling everyone I'm unstable. My voice cracked. My own sister, my parents, they all think he's the saint who put up with me. Drew's jaw tightened. That's messed up. He doesn't swear much, Drew. When he edits himself like that, I know he's actually furious. What are you going to do? He asked gently. I don't know, I said. Part of me wants to just suck it up, you know. Be there for her. Smile through it. Act like it doesn't bother me. He raised an eyebrow. And the other part? The other part wants to send a group email saying, have fun with your little Tyler worship ceremony. I'll be at home burning sage and my wedding photos. He laughed. Well, I support you not burning your house down. But seriously, Esme, you're allowed not to go. It's my sister's wedding. If I don't show up, I'll be the villain of every family story for the next 20 years. His eyes softened. You already are, according to them. That stung because it was true. In their narrative, I was the problem child. The one who blew up her marriage, changed her name, made everything complicated. The idea of adding skipped her sister's wedding to that list made my stomach churn. I brought it to Dr. Winter's next session, sat in my usual chair, clutching a pillow like a life raft. What would happen if you said no? She asked. They'd be furious, I said immediately. They'd say I was selfish, that I was making everything about me. Would they be right? I opened my mouth to say yes, then paused. I mean, it would be about me in the sense that I'd be protecting myself from being re-traumatized. She nodded. That's called setting a boundary. It's not selfish, it's self-preserving. I dragged my hands over my face. I hate that my boundary hurts other people. That's the thing about boundaries, she said. People who benefit from you having none will always be hurt when you put some up. Ouch. We role-played conversations with Allison. We wrote out possible texts. Dr. Winters had me list what I'd need to feel safe if I did attend the wedding. Tyler not officiating, Tyler not making a speech, Tyler not approaching me. The list was long. The chances of my family respecting any of it felt low. A few days later, my phone dinged with a WhatsApp notification. Family chat. Allison. Hey everyone. Luke and I have some exciting wedding updates. Mom. Ooh, can't wait. Craig. As long as I don't have to wear pink again, I'm in. Dad. Then the bomb. Allison. We asked Tyler if he'd consider officiating, and he said he'd be honored. Tiny heart emojis from my mom. Love this. From Craig. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could feel my chest tightening. Finally, I typed, Esme, I'm really not okay with Tyler officiating. I won't be able to stand up there if he does. 3 dots. Then, Mom, let's not do this over text, Paula. Call me. And I'm not doing this on the phone so it can be twisted later. I'm being clear now. If Tyler officiates, I won't be part of the ceremony. Craig, here we go. Dad, Esme, this is your sister's day. Don't make ultimatums. Allison, wow. Okay. Thanks for making this about you, as usual. I set my phone down, breathing hard. It buzzed again almost immediately, Mom calling. I let it go to voicemail. A few hours later, I got a DM on Instagram from a name I didn't recognize at first. Luke. Hey, Esme. Hope you're well. Allie's really upset and I wanted to reach out directly. I know you've had a tough time, and I respect your healing journey, but Tyler has been a rock for us this year. I can't imagine anyone else marrying us. I hope you can find it in your heart to be there for your sister, despite your stuff with him, my stuff with him. I closed my eyes. If this were a movie, this is where I'd flip a table. In real life, I just felt tired, bone deep tired. The hits kept coming. A few days later, I went to Aunt Susan's house for what I thought was a small bridal planning get-together. She'd texted, just us girls, dress shopping, brainstorm, and wine. I walked in with a bottle of Riesling and a stack of bridal magazine pages I'd ripped out, with notes like, this neckline would look amazing on Allie. I shrugged off my coat, stepped into the living room, and froze. Tyler was there. Not just Tyler. Tyler on the couch between my parents, a glass of red wine in hand, laughing at something Craig had just said. My mom was perched on the armrest next to him, her hand on his shoulder. The room went quiet when they saw me. What is he doing here? I asked, my voice way too loud in the suddenly hushed space. Aunt Susan fluttered her hands. Oh, Esme, honey, I meant to text you. Tyler stopped by to talk to your uncle, and we thought, well, since you two have to see each other at the wedding anyway. You ambushed me. Don't say it like that, my mom snapped. We're trying to help you heal. My throat closed up. There's this thing trauma does, where your body reacts before your brain can catch up. My palms went sweaty. My vision narrowed. I could smell his cologne across the room, a scent that used to mean home, now pure adrenaline. Tyler set down his wine and stood, putting on that concerned Tyler face. Paula, Esme, I said automatically. He smiled, patronizing. Right, Esme, can we talk? No, I said. We cannot talk. You can talk to my lawyer if you have something to say. See? Craig muttered. This is what we're dealing with. My dad gave him a look, but didn't say anything. Tyler held his hands up like he was warding off a wild animal. I just want us all to move past this. You walking out, it hurt a lot of people, not just me. Oh, poor you, I snapped. 5 pairs of eyes widened. I never talked back like that. You hurt me for years. You made me think I was losing my mind. And now what? You want a group hug? Okay, that's enough, my father said sharply. Sit down, Paula. You're making a scene. I looked around. All these people I'd known my whole life, sitting comfortably around the man who dismantled me piece by piece. And somehow, I was the one making a scene. Something in me finally fully broke. But in a good way this time. Like a bone that's been set wrong and finally snapped so it can heal correctly. I set the bottle of wine on the table. No, I said quietly. I'm not sitting down. I'm leaving. Tyler shook his head sadly. There she goes, running away again instead of facing her issues. I spun back to him. You know what my issue is, Tyler. You. You and the fact that you've convinced my entire family that my trauma is a personality flaw. I turned to my parents, my voice trembling. I can't believe you did this. I told you I didn't want to see him, and you brought me here anyway. This was my idea, Aunt Susan blurted, looking guilty. I just thought if you two could talk. You thought forcing me to be in a room with my ex without warning would what, cure me? I asked. She wilted. I'm sorry, I didn't think. My mom crossed her arms. We're tired of tiptoeing around your reactions, Paula. Life doesn't revolve around your triggers. You're not the only one who lost something in that divorce. Esme, I thought. My name is Esme, but I didn't bother saying it out loud. Instead, I straightened my shoulders. I'm going home, I said. If any of you want to know who I actually am, or what actually happened in my marriage, you know where to find me. But I'm done letting you stage interventions I didn't ask for. I'm done being the problem child in Tyler's story. I walked out to the sound of my mom saying, See, this is what we've been dealing with, and Tyler murmuring something soothing. In the car, my hands shook so badly I had to sit for 10 minutes before I could even turn the key. I called Drew. He answered on the second ring. Hey, babe, you okay? No, I said. Then, come over. I'm already in my car, he said. We spent that night on my couch, half watching some terrible sci-fi movie while I alternated between numb and furious. At some point I said, I can't go to that wedding. Drew didn't say, Are you sure? Or maybe you'll regret it. He just nodded. Okay, then you're not going. But Allison, you can love your sister and still not walk into an environment that will shred you, he said gently. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Dr. Winters agreed. You are not responsible for managing their disappointment, she said. You are responsible for managing your own well-being. So I sat down and wrote a letter. Not a text that could be misread in 10 different ways. A letter I printed and physically delivered to my parents' house, sliding sealed envelopes with their names and Allison's into the mailbox. In it, I said, I love you. I will not be attending the wedding if Tyler is officiating. I will not be discussing this further. This is not a punishment. It's self-protection. My therapist supports this boundary. I hope someday you'll understand. Then I turned off my phone for 24 hours. When I turned it back on, I had 18 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and more texts than I could scroll through without getting dizzy. Mom, how dare you do this to your sister? Dad, call me. This has gone far enough. Allison, you're dead to me. That one honestly hurt more than I expected. Craig, congratulations. You've made everything about you again. One text stood out, though, tucked between the rage. Megan, hey, I got your letter. I'm processing. But I wanted you to know I don't think you're crazy. Megan, my baby sister, the one who'd been a kid when all this was going down. I hadn't even expected her to read the letter thoughtfully, let alone reply with that. I wrote back, Esme, thank you. I'm here when/if you ever want to talk about it. No pressure. The weeks leading up to the wedding were weird. My life with Drew and my students and my art projects went on as normal, but there was this constant background hum of family drama. My mom sending resources about forgiveness. Craig posting vague Facebook statuses about certain people who thrive on victimhood. Allison sharing engagement photos with captions like, "So blessed to be surrounded by people who truly support us." I kept my distance. I poured my energy into things that made me feel alive. Collage night with a couple of women from work. Long walks with Drew. Messy painting sessions on my apartment floor with a drop cloth and cheap canvases. One afternoon, my cousin Laura texted me. We hadn't been close in years, but we followed each other on Instagram. Laura, "Hey, random, but are you going to Allie's hen night?" Esme, "No, we're not in a great place right now." She sent a thinking face emoji. Laura, "I kinda guessed. I left the family WhatsApp ages ago. It got unbearable." My heart thumped. Esme, "What do you mean?" Laura, "They talk about you like you're a case study, not a person. Group diagnosing you, inviting Tyler to weigh in. It was gross. Teth." I stared at the screen. Esme, "They what?" She called me. "I didn't want to stir the pot," she said. "But honestly, if it were me, I'd want to know." She told me about the other group chat, apparently titled Prayer Warriors for Paula, at one point, then changed to Family Support Circle when someone pointed out that was a bit much. In it, my parents and siblings had been sharing updates on my behavior, asking for advice, complaining about my resistance to Tyler's attempts at reconciliation. "They really talk like Tyler is your legal guardian," Laura said, disgusted. "He weighs in on everything. Like, I think we should give Paula some space this week. She's in a fragile spot." And everyone just nods along. I felt sick, not just because they were talking about me, but because the language he used was so familiar. Fragile, dramatic, unstable. They'd all adopted it like a shared script. "You left the chat," I said. "Yeah," she said. It made me feel complicit. And no one even asked why I left, which told me everything I needed to know. We stayed on the phone for an hour. She told me about her kids. I told her about my students. It was the longest, most honest conversation I'd had with a blood relative in months. "Hey," she said before we hung up. "If you're not going to the wedding, do you want to hang out that weekend instead? Me and Dan were thinking of taking the kids to the lake. There's room, if you and Drew want to join." I actually teared up. "Yeah," I said. "I'd love that." So that's what we did. On the day my sister walked down the aisle, I woke up in a little rental cabin by a lake, sunlight filtering through pine trees. Drew was snoring softly beside me. There was birdsong instead of church bells. Part of me ached thinking about what I was missing. My grandfather's cufflinks on Luke's shirt, Allison's nervous laughter, the family photos I'd never be in. But another part of me felt free. I made pancakes with Laura's kids. We went canoeing. We sat on the dock with our feet in the water, while her toddler tried to feed goldfish crackers to minnows. At one point, I checked my phone. Megan had sent a single text. "Megan, they started the ceremony an hour late because Tyler was stuck in traffic. Mom nearly had a stroke. Wish you were here with popcorn." I laughed so hard I choked on my coffee. Later that night, she sent another. "Megan, he mentioned you in his little sermon thing. Said he still prays every day for you to find peace." People actually wiped their eyes. I nearly walked out. Rage flared, but it was cooler now, edged with something like pity. Of course, he'd used my absence as a stage prop. Of course. 3 days after the wedding, I got an email from Tyler. Subject: extending an olive branch. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it, against my better judgment. He wrote about how sad he'd been that I wasn't there to see our family all together, how he'd forgiven me for walking out, how he still believed I was at heart a good person who had gone astray. He encouraged me to seek professional help to unpack the delusions I developed about our marriage, and offered to sit down with everyone and clear the air, if I was willing. It read like a sermon, and a PR statement had a baby. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Dr. Winters and, after a moment's hesitation, to Megan. She texted, "Megan, OMG, this is unhinged. He sounds like he's auditioning for a TED Talk." And then, a minute later, "Megan, can we talk? Like really talk? I need to tell you some stuff." We met at a coffee shop near campus, where she'd just finished her sophomore year. She looked older than I remembered. Short hair now, a tiny nose ring, a stack of bracelets jangling on her wrist. For a second I grieved all the years I'd missed being her big sister properly. Then she hugged me so hard my ribs creaked. We sat with our drinks, her iced, me hot, always, and just studied each other for a moment. "You look happy," she said. "Different." "Different good or different cult member?" I asked. She snorted. "Good, different. Like taller, inside." I laughed, embarrassed. "Therapy helps." She fiddled with her straw. "Okay. So, There's something I should have told you years ago. Okay, after you moved out, she said, Tyler started texting me. At first, it was just like, how's school, and tell your parents I said hi. And then it got weird. My skin crawled. Weird how? He started asking a lot of questions about you, where you were staying, who you were seeing, if you'd mentioned him. He'd be like, I'm so worried about her mental state, Megs. You're the only one she might still listen to. She rolled her eyes. He called me Megs. No one calls me that. I gripped my mug. Did he ask you to spy? She nodded, cheeks flushing. Yeah, and I did. A little, at first. I'd tell him vague stuff. She's working a lot. She's with Tara. Because everyone was acting like, you were this bomb that might go off and he was the bomb squad. I winced. But then, she continued, he sent me this long message about how if you started talking about being a new person or leaving Paula behind, that might be a sign of a psychotic break, and I should tell him immediately. I stared at her. He said that before I even changed my name. Yeah, she said quietly. Months before. It freaked me out so much I blocked his number. Mom freaked when she found out. Said I was turning my back on family. In my head, puzzle pieces started clicking. Of course. That's why, when I finally did change my name, everyone went straight to delusional. He'd planted the story in advance. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner, Megan said, eyes shining. I was scared, and I didn't want to make things worse. But when I saw him up there at the wedding talking about you like you were a stray dog he was praying for, I wanted to scream. You didn't make anything worse, I said. He did. You were a kid in the middle of it. She sniffed. Mom and Dad are starting to see it, I think. After I told them what he'd texted me, Dad looked like he was going to be sick. Mom keeps saying, that doesn't sound like the Tyler we know. That is the Tyler they know, I said. They just only ever saw St. Tyler, patron of long-suffering husbands. She snorted a laugh. I told her more details than I'd ever given my family before. Not everything, but enough. Little things, like the sketchbook in the trash, the towel, the way he'd forget conversations. She listened, face pale, then angry. Why didn't you tell us? She whispered. Because every time I tried to express even mild unhappiness, I said, Mom called me ungrateful. Dad told me to work harder. And Tyler told you all I was unstable. I didn't think anyone would believe me. I do, she said fiercely. I believe you. I cried in a busy coffee shop, which is one of my least favorite things, but it felt cleansing. Word got around, slowly. Megan told my parents what she'd told me. Laura shared screenshots from the family chat that made my dad physically recoil. Tyler advising on how to manage Paula's episodes. My mother describing me as lost. Craig joking about Paula's latest identity drama. It wasn't one conversation that changed things. It was a drip, drip, drip of truth over months. Tiny cracks in their image of Tyler widening. Dad called me one afternoon. I almost didn't answer. He stumbled. Can we talk? We met at the same diner where they'd first tried to talk me out of divorcing Tyler. Same sticky booths, same waitress, different air. For a while we talked about safe things, work, weather, Megan's classes. My heart pounded, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Finally, he cleared his throat. Your sister told us about those messages. From Tyler. I nodded, waiting. And Laura showed us some things from that group chat. He looked ashamed. That was out of line. Out of line, I echoed. Dad, you were planning interventions based on his version of me. He flinched. I know. I thought I was helping. We thought we were helping. I took a breath. You thought you were being good parents. I get it. It still hurt. He stared at his coffee. I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you. When you first told us you weren't happy. When you said he swallowed. In this family, we don't talk about that. We push things down. I thought you were just adjusting. I didn't want to believe a man I liked, a man I'd practically brought into the family, could be capable of what you're describing. I know, I said quietly. It's easier to believe your daughter is unstable than that you misjudged someone that badly. He winced, but didn't argue. I can't change what I did, he said after a moment, but I can try to do better now, if you'll let me. It wasn't a full, neat redemption with violins playing in the background. He still gets defensive sometimes. My mom still clings to the idea that Tyler wasn't all bad. Allison still barely speaks to me, convinced I ruined her wedding by not attending it. Craig offered me one of those non-apology apologies. I'm sorry if you felt hurt by what I said. and I declined to do emotional gymnastics to make it sound better. Some relationships have healed a bit. Some are still dangling by a thread. Some I've had to let go, at least for now. But here's the thing. My life stopped revolving around whether my family approved of my choices. My circle looks different now. It's Tara, who saved a spot on her couch when I had nowhere else to go. It's Drew, who makes me coffee on Monday mornings and kisses my paint-streaked hands. It's Laura and her kids, who now call me Aunt Ezzy. It's Megan, who sends me memes about therapy and comes over for sister dinners, where we cook pasta with too much garlic and talk about everything and nothing. We started a little tradition. The day of Allison's wedding anniversary, because yes, she celebrates it on Instagram like it's a national holiday. Megan and I have what we call Reclamation Day. We do something that would have made old Paula squirm but makes Esme feel alive. This year, it was getting matching tiny tattoos on our ankles, a little sprig of lavender, our grandmother's favorite. Sometimes my mom calls me Esme now. The first time she did it without stumbling, I almost cried. It was on accident, middle of a conversation about Christmas. She said, "Esme, can you bring that cranberry thing you make?" And then stopped, like she'd heard herself. "Thank you," I said quietly. She nodded, eyes shining, and changed the subject. "There are still group chats I'm not invited to. There are still family events I skip, because the thought of walking into a room full of people who spent years dissecting my mental state makes my skin crawl. There are still days when a stray comment from a relative sends me spiraling back into wondering if I'm the crazy one. But then I look at my life, at the kids who run into my art room squealing, 'Miss Matthews, look what I made,' at the canvases stacked against my bedroom wall, messy and bright, at Drew, who asks, 'How can I support you?' instead of 'Why are you like this?' At the name Esme stitched in glitter on a new Christmas stocking I bought for myself. And I remember, the most powerful revenge I will ever get is living a life that Tyler never gets to narrate. He still tries, from what I hear. He moved on. Date a woman who looks suspiciously like a Pinterest version of me 5 years ago. He posted some earnest Facebook essay about learning from past relationships that made several mutual friends DM me with, "Is he talking about you?" I just sent them the shrug emoji. One day, out of the blue, I got an email from his new ex, Amanda. The subject line just said, "I think we share a story." She wrote about how charming he'd been at first, how he'd gradually eroded her sense of reality, how he'd told her, too, that his previous wife had had a break from reality and rewritten history. "I just wanted you to know," she wrote at the end, "that I believe you, and I'm sorry it took going through it myself to see it." I sat with that email for a long time. Then I forwarded it to Dr. Winters with a simple, "You were right about the pattern." I didn't forward it to my family. I didn't need to anymore. Their opinion of him, of me, doesn't define my truth. A year and a half after the wedding incident, Drew proposed. Not in some grand cinematic way. We were in the park where we'd had our first awkward coffee date years ago, sitting on a slightly damp bench feeding ducks the crusts of our sandwiches. He fidgeted for a minute, then pulled a small box from his pocket, hands shaking. "Esme," he said, "you are the bravest person I know. You taught me what it looks like to choose yourself, even when it costs you. Will you marry me?" I laughed and cried and said yes, obviously. The ring was simple and perfect. Telling my family was interesting. My mom immediately launched into questions about venues and dates and whether we'd invite everyone. "What does everyone mean?" I asked. She hesitated. "Well, family, close friends." "Tyler isn't family," I said. A silence crackled across the line. "I wasn't suggesting." "I know," I cut in. "I'm just saying it out loud, for the record." Our wedding was small, in a garden late September, leaves just starting to turn. Tara was my maid of honor. Megan and 2 friends from work were my bridesmaids. My dad walked me down the aisle, but it felt different this time, less a transaction, more a gesture of support. Allison didn't come. She sent a gift that clearly had my old name on the order form, Paula and Drew, printed in cursive on a cutting board. The vendor had somehow corrected it to the Matthews Logans. I took it as a little wink from the universe. During the reception, between cake and dancing, my dad pulled me aside. The fairy lights made his silver hair glow a little. He looked nervous. "I just wanted to say," he said, clearing his throat, "I'm proud of you, Esme. Not just today, for everything, for getting out, for standing your ground when we didn't make that easy." I swallowed hard. He nodded, eyes misty. "Took me too long to see what was in front of me. Your grandmother would have been furious with me," he added with a sad chuckle. "Yeah," I said, laughing. "She would have smacked you with a wooden spoon." We clinked our glasses together. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was real. Later, sitting on the edge of the dance floor, watching my students, yes, a few had crashed the wedding with their parents' blessing, twirl around like sugar-fueled tornadoes, I felt this wave of peace. Not because everyone had suddenly understood me. Some never will. Not because I'd gotten revenge in the dramatic movie way, with confessions and public apologies, but because I'd stopped giving other people the pen to write my story. So yeah, when my sister asked me to let my abuser officiate her wedding, I laughed. I said no. I missed photos I'll never be in. I became the villain in some people's narratives, but I also became the hero of my own. If you've listened this far, I have a feeling some part of this hit a nerve for you. Maybe you've got a Tyler in your past or your present. Maybe your family still calls you by a name or a role that doesn't fit anymore. Maybe you're the difficult one now because you finally started saying no. I just want you to hear this from someone who's been there. You are not crazy for wanting to be treated with respect. You are not selfish for protecting your peace. And you are absolutely allowed to reinvent yourself, even if the people who knew you first don't approve. If my story helped you feel a little less alone, or gave you that tiny nudge to stand a bit taller inside your own life, I'd really love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had to set those brutal, scary boundaries with family, or walk away from a role they wrote for you. How did you handle the guilt, the backlash, the grief? And if you want more real stories like this, messy, honest, a little bit painful, but with that satisfying glow of reclaiming your power, make sure you hit subscribe to Revenge Diary. Share this video with a friend who might be stuck in that same tug of war between who they were taught to be and who they actually are. You deserve a life where your name, your choices, and your story are yours. Thanks for sitting with me in mine.